Hello folks, how are you doing? Hope you're doing great. Thank you for coming once again to Mesoamerica, your place for Mesoamerican occult knowledge, religion, and culture. Today I want to speak to you about one of the coolest documents that we still have. The secrets of how to build the pyramids in Mexico are gone. The secrets of the philosophy and the religious and theological thought of the Maya, the Aztec, and over 200 different nations all over Mexico and Guatemala, Costa Rica, Belize are gone. Well, some still survive, so we're trying to piece things together. And one of the reasons why I have this channel and I try to keep it going. And that is because for 500 years, all that stuff has been gone. We have only very little pieces and archaeological pieces and legends that tell us about stories, and it is now with the advent of the internet, with the comparison of analysis and more archaeological research that has been made, that we're able to put pieces together a little bit better than we have in the last 500 years. Today I want to speak to you about one of the wonderful fruits of this great research, and that is the Dresden Codex. This will be the first page, and that means there will be a series of different episodes. Thank you very much for joining me, and let's go. Thank you. Now, what is the Dresden Codex? The Dresden Codex is an almanac. And it is not just like our almanacs, where, for those of you that do not know what an almanac is, because now we get all the information from our phones and the internet, the almanacs used to be used mostly by farmers. And they were used by farmers because it gave us a time baseline for the rising of the sun, the setting of the sun, when we're going to have a new moon, when we're going to have a full moon, the humidity and other meteorological information regarding a particular place of land. For example, Benjamin Franklin, he used to make his own almanacs. He used to publish them, and they were very useful for the early settlers here in the United States. And almanacs have been written for ages. Have been written by the Babylonians, by the Egyptians, by the Romans, by the Greeks. Almost every culture in the world has written almanacs because of their great usefulness, because that's how people ate. And so where does the Dresden Codex come from? According to most archaeological research and academics, the Dresden Codex came from Chichen Itza. Yes, the one with the big pyramid of Kukulkan. And it was probably written around the year 1200, 1225. And it was obviously not an original document. It was probably copied from another document, and so therefore an almanac that was written for a particular period. It was probably written as a copy, this one, the Dresden Codex, from another document, likely from another neighboring city or within the region. It could have been either Mayapan or Copan, one of the close cities close to Chichen Itza. Akpak, for example, seems to be a kind of religious center, but the one that we have today, or at least that survives, is in the Royal Library of Dresden, and that is why it survived, and that is why it's called the Dresden Codex. The original name of the book was probably written as kind of like the Almanac of Venus, or the Almanac of the Tolzin. It was an almanac, and there are great things that we can learn from this almanac, not only because of the meteorological and calendar uses of this particular almanac, but because of the religious perspective and the way that the Maya wrote. There's great insight to be learned, and this is what this episode is all about. In fact, this whole series is all about. Now, this is the first page of the Dresden Codex, or the Almanac of Venus. The figure on the top, that according to most archaeologists, oh yeah, by the way, so this will be all the information from now on, at least until the end, what came from the Arqueología Mexicana magazine, tome number 67. So therefore, these are peer-reviewed papers. These are not me just making stuff up. These are archaeologists from UNAM and from INA advocating these points, because there's so much work that has been done to try to uncover what it is that the Dresden Codex says. Anyway, so this is the first page of the Dresden Codex, and the god on top, archaeology says that is Itzamna. Itzamna is one of the creator gods in the Popol Vuh, and he has his tongue out like this. That was a symbol of the god requesting a sacrifice. And also he seems to be carrying a cup in his left hand. The cup was probably to also put its blood in there. Now, since this is an almanac, and then we have the god Itzamna, we can, this is me, not the magazine, we can elaborate on the relationship between Itzamna and time. It seems like there is a very clear relationship between the passage of time, particularly because of the god on the bottom. This is also back to a scholarly paper. There's an archaeologist, German archaeologist, who said that the god on the bottom, we don't really know who the god is. The god on the bottom seems to be carrying a glyph, and he seems to be in a position of kind of like a movement. When they have gods of movement, that means that something's about to start. And since it's carrying a 5 glyph with the other glyphs, it's if you multiply them, it gives you 260 days. The 260 days is the calendar of Thompson. Now, 260 does not equate to 365. The knew very well that the year lasted 365.25 days. But the reason why they used the 260-day calendar was because this was the religious calendar, the calendar round. And these, now going out of the archaeological Arqueología Mexicana statements, now this implication is pretty cool. Number one, the fact that the god on top, it seems to be blessing the calendar, or is part of the calendar. I mean, it's kind of like, for example, the Moorish books, the Al-Andalus books, where stars are like, making an invocation to Allah and asking for its blessings. This is very much the same, where it's the Maya seem to be requesting the blessings of Itzamna and to invoke it and to remember him. And as a creator god who is also very close related to time, this is not, to be surprising, and it just shows the devotion of the people of the Maya have had a similar devotion that the Muslims had for Allah. I mean, I think it's very similar. And then at the bottom is just time is not just time. For us, time is just time. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, March, August. It's just a name, just a number. But for the Maya, this was not the case. It is obvious that they assimilated time to a particular god or to a particular movement of the gods. And therefore, as we're going to go through the Dresden Codex, we are going to learn that there's a relationship between the progression of time and how gods are involved into that particular passage of time. But it's also even cooler, because there's divination, there are rituals, there's assignments to meaning as to how does time progress and what does it mean and what can we allude from it, how can we read it as far as information for us to be able to know how to plant or how to harvest or how to tend of our crops. It is very beautiful and poetic, the way in which the Maya assimilated time and their theology or divinity in relation to how just nature works. Another thing that we can learn from this particular codex is something very interesting.
The codex is very hard to read. It's one of the most damaged pages of the whole codex. It's been around since like the year 1200. Now it's like 1,000 years. Like only maybe not 1,000 years, not 1,000 years, but it's been a very long time. 800 years, 800 and something years. One of the cool things that we can learn is how the Maya wrote. We also learned how they wrote based on the glyphs that we can find. If we go to southern Mexico or Guatemala, we can find glyphs that are written from top to bottom. The Chinese wrote in a very similar way. It is also very poetic, in my opinion. Top to bottom, describe Arqueología Mexicana. This is me making my assumptions as to what does that potentially mean. Writing top to bottom is kind of like the blessings of the heavens or the gods coming down to us, to earth. It has it's like, to me, it's like the way they write, the way they interpret just nature and just the workings within nature seem to be so beautiful and so poetic. The blessings of the gods from up on high coming down to us, and time coming down from top to bottom, and just writing as the gods, bring down their gifts and their time. It is just a very interesting way in which they're able to just make a beautiful poem out of every single aspect of their lives and out of every single aspect of nature. I do not know if the Chinese have the same type of attribution of why do they write from top to bottom, but I just think that's really cool. Now, why did the Maya didn't use the 365.25 day calendar year? It is because for the Maya, time was not just time. Time was an intricate part of the gods and the way in which they made sense of reality. Now, according to some records, Spanish records, the Aztecs had a huge, gigantic population density in their main city of Tenochtitlan. Other cities also, there were not that many records as to how many people lived there, but the Maya have had very large density numbers of population, particularly in now like the area of El Mirador or San Bartolo, where now we're having like carbon records of also millions of people residing within the city. If we know one thing about population density is that there cannot be a huge, large numbers of people living in a particular city if they don't have enough to eat. Now, we have to understand that this was like 800 years ago, and 800 years ago we didn't have buses, we didn't have trucks where we could load food or move it somewhere else. We did not have very developed sanitation systems or even medical systems. We didn't have Monsanto, creating just crops with their pesticides. It was just difficult to make a living back then. It was just hard because we didn't have all the technology advances that we have today to have huge population densities in our cities. So therefore, whatever they did, it worked. This calendar, this almanac, was particularly useful and effective for people to get fed, for the leaders of the particular nations who use these almanacs to feed their people. And not only that, it also kept them in a cultural, theological world that just was permeated throughout everyone, from the king to the priest to the slaves to the lowest of the low, the poorest of the poor. The theological meaning of nature was permeated everywhere, and this was poetic. It might have been very utilitarian, but it was poetic and it was beautiful, which is something that we don't have. It's like we have to work Monday through Friday, at least over 40 hours a week. And, we come home and some of us just go and watch TV, and that is the meaning of our lives. We
we base our culture and the meaning of our lives based on either TV programs. It's kind of obvious on, what is it that people buy, when with their spare money, they go to Comic Cons or they go to the movies. They want to be entertained. The Maya were entertained with the meaning of reality, with the plants and the moon and the sun and the movement of time. It was a lot more meaningful, in my opinion, a lot more poetic. And, there are many reasons why I do this channel. But this is one of the things that we need to at least be able to postulate and wonder and try to appreciate. At least I appreciate it because, I've been hooked on this stuff since I was a little boy. Anyway, next episode will be on the second page of the Dresden Codex. We will dwell more into the meaning of the 260-day Solstice calendar, the meaning of the gods, the passage of time, and how does it relate to the Maya people's lives. Thank you very much for joining me. Have a great one. Bye-bye.